Uh, just testing something really quickly here. All right, well, I think it is what it is. Okay, so real quick, I just talked for about 35 minutes on something, and then I realized I was about to end the stream, and then I saw that I wasn't live the whole time. So I'm gonna start over with this topic, and I think that this is pretty fun because this is like the perfect thing to happen for the topic. I want to talk about dealing with failure and how I've dealt with failure in my own life, how I approach it, especially recently because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I think it's really funny because like right now I am kind of experiencing it on a very micro level. When you fail at something, I think the first instinct is to think that like you kind of go through like the 5 stages of death in a way, like the bargaining, acceptance, denial, fucking anger might be one of them, and then acceptance. I'm going through that right now. And at first, like the bargaining one is really funny. Like that's the one that I always hit, and it kind of reminds me of like a Buddhist-y sort of like the concept of resistance, where you're just like, I mean they're all kind of like that, but you're resisting the present. Like you're like deeply unsatisfied with what's happening in the present moment, so you're trying to in your brain come up with some sort of like a trade you could make or something to like achieve the goal or achieve the present moment that you actually wanted. So for me right now, that would be I would do anything. I just wish that I had recorded that stream. I wish I just was live and didn't fuck that up. That would be very nice. But at a certain point, you just have to accept like. I hope I don't run out of steam now because I had a really good 35 minutes there. It was a pretty good one. I was excited to listen to it. But regardless, I think that like failure is maybe one of the most human parts of life. It's such a universal experience. Every person goes through failure on some scale during their life, probably with great frequency. We all fail at things all the time. And I think that people say that like there's like platitudes about how like, you know, I know Shaq had a thing about like before you learn to succeed, you must first learn to fail. He would say shit like that, and other people would too. And sure, those are true and they're nice platitudes. But I think that like very recently, I'm coming to believe that like failure beyond that, failure is like gift. Like failure is. If you fail, that's probably a really, really fucking good thing. You probably stretched yourself out to do something that maybe like, you know, is outside of your comfort zone or like you're trying to do something. If you never fail, it's probably because you're not pushing yourself. So failure is an indication that you're pushing yourself in the right direction. The problem is failure, it's brutal. Like it's the example that I like. That I'm thinking of is, let's say you're learning how to code, you start applying for jobs, and you get like, let's say you get 10 interviews, and you do all the interviews, and at the end of it, you don't get it, like you got rejected by every one of the companies. Like let's say you did that, you would be feeling by the number 10, you would be like, my guess is you would be like despondent. I'm sure I would have been. Like you would have almost felt like a sort of hopelessness about the whole situation. Which, to be fair, you probably should feel. But what you should do, what I would do, and what probably every person is going to do at that point is either they're going to give up, which I really hope nobody, like if it's something you really want, you probably aren't going to be able to give up anyway. Or you're going to go back and your mind is going to process this stuff. It's going to like mine your memories for what went wrong. And you'll think about like, I fucked up this interview question. I was like kind of nervous for this one. And like this one, my webcam was being fucking weird and this one I said some shit that I maybe should not have said, or I disagree with the person in a way that like wasn't, you know, that wasn't like a good look for me or whatever. And all that stuff is really, really good. You should go back and like, when you fail, like mine your memories. If it's a relationship or like, you just got dumped or you, broken up. I mean, I'll say if it's like a very long-term relationship and you get broken up with, that's going to be brutal on another level. And that's almost like its own thing. But even that's the same kind of thing. If it's like a short-ish relationship, you go back and like in your mind, you rework the memories and you're mining your memory and like thinking about what went wrong and what you could have changed. And at first, I think that like in both of these examples, when you're doing it, it is still that form of like resistance, bargaining type shit, where in your mind, you think that you can somehow fix this stuff, maybe that's not necessarily true, but there's almost like it can reach a point of being unhealthy, where if you're just over analyzing stuff, like at a certain point you're doing yourself a disservice, and you need to get to a point of letting go, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But when you experience that failure, I think it's really good. Firstly, like feel the emotions. There's going to be, if it's the job thing, you're going to feel fucking hopeless. Probably you're going to feel like you're wasting your time. You're going to be feeling like all this nastiness is going to be there. And you almost can't, that's just like your brain kind of playing tricks on you. It's your brain doing like the evolutionary sort of reptilian brain type stuff that you can't control. In your like prefrontal cortex-y sort of conscious brain, you can think like, hey, there's a ton of jobs out there and blah, 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 or there's another girl, there's another dude out there, etc. But like in those moments, it's like that doesn't fix like the feeling that you have in your chest. You know what I mean? Like the emotion's still there. So you want to like let yourself feel the emotions. Don't get too caught up on them. Understand that they're pretty outside your control at a certain point. Like it's that deep unconscious reptilian stuff. You can't help it almost. So don't get too caught up in it. But you do want to like, I think that there is a ton of value in going back. I mean, this is like why failure is good. You now have like, you've been given a set of circumstances that now you like can look at this and analyze it and you can break it down and you can see where you need to improve at something. So if you fuck up your job interview, like I said, you might, fuck, I don't know, if it's JavaScript, I fucked up like this sort method. I better go back and like look at how JavaScript sort method works or some shit like that. I think that like that's where the gift is. Like you've been revealed your weaknesses and now you've been given this opportunity to work on these things. Oh man, kind of tired today. I can only stream for another 10 minutes or so, which is kind of frustrating. I have a bunch of stuff to do today, and I'm a little rambly right now. I might actually come back and talk about this concept again another time because it's something that like I have been finding really, really interesting as I'm going through like a couple failures in my life, and I've gone through a period of the last 2 years of my life have been pretty fucking great, and like almost everything has, I mean, there's been like, there's some shit that hasn't gone perfectly, but overall like everything's been very, very easy. It's made me really, really complacent. I mentioned this in a bunch of my the other videos, and it kind of reminds me of that like that Batman Bane line, like victory has made you weak. That's how I feel now. Like looking back, I think the last 2 or 3 years everything has gone right. Like even everything has gone just so fucking smoothly for the most part. There's been a couple hiccups with the job stuff, but those have always worked themselves out pretty quickly. But and also not really. Like none of the issues I had felt like failures. They felt like misfires or miscommunications more than anything. I never felt like I failed at those jobs. But now I'm like definitely going through a couple things that I'm like I'm like, at first I was, like I said, caught up in all the emotion, but now I'm like, this is like the best. This might be, I think I'm going to look back now in a couple months or even a couple years. And I think that like the last 2 or 3 months, which have been semi brutal, will be like a defining moment for me. Just like in my life, I think that like I don't know. I gotta think on this a bit more, but like I could not be more thankful for being in the position that I'm in, for being in this position of failure, for having failed. Like I think that it's giving me this opportunity to look at all the things about, like, to do like really really fucking brutally deep introspection, and to see like what things about me I need to work on and change. It's not easy, but it's like I think that if I had not experienced these failures, I never would do this. And then I also think that like at some point for me that like what I'm going through now is going to be like inevitable, and the earlier I can deal with it, the better. I kind of feel like. So I view that like this has been legalize it, baby. But I do think that I think like the last 3 months have been tough, and I think that like I'm going through that process. There was about 2 or 3 week period, 2 weeks about that were really tough, and then you're just like going through your head of like what went wrong, what can you fix and shit. And then I do think that at a certain point you have to let go of any of these failures. Like if it's a job you thought that would be the perfect job and would like, if I only got this job it would just solve all my problems and this and that, and if only I did this in the job interview, okay, I'll go work on that. At a certain point, though, you just have to like let that shit go. And that's really hard, but I think that's also a very human concept. Is this, you know, the idea of just letting go. You got to let go at some point. I think it's like the example I think is really funny is Paul Rudd in 40-Year-Old Virgin, where his character dated somebody for like 3 months or like four months or what, I can't, maybe it was like 3 dates even, and he's like obsessing about this girl years later, like calling her and emailing her and shit. And like you see people like that in like normal life who are just so hung up on like past people and past things, and it's almost like weird. Like it's almost like they can't let go, and because you can't let go, you never really make space for the next thing. And the universe will give you so much opportunity, like nonstop. Like universe is going to give you so much opportunity, but if you're still hung on to some shit that happened years ago, you're not in a place where you're ready for it, and like you won't even see it. That's another concept I've been thinking of, is that like there is an abundance of opportunity in like everything. You just have to be ready for it, and it'll like you'll see it everywhere. It also comes out of nowhere, and things change very 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 quickly. A good example would be like my first job. I went from like teaching myself how to code and then started applying to jobs, or even when I moved to Korea, like it happened really, really fast. My first job, I had one call with a recruiter. I didn't think anything of it. One like interview with a couple of the developers at the company, and then they gave me a job offer, and by like next week I was in Iowa. Like it moved so fast. It happens for like dating relationships too, where shit just happens like out of nowhere when you least expect it. That's like a really common thing where people like, you know, meet somebody when they're not expecting to meet somebody. That's an interesting thing too. But I do think there is this idea that the universe doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. And for me personally, like looking back at my own like little failure, of course all I wanted was like this thing. But the thing is, and this is really interesting too, even if I had gotten what I wanted, I think that like I think it would have worked out terribly for me. I think like I think back now to when I was like 20 or 21, and there was a girl who I really liked, and I thought I thought she was like, you know, best girl that I could possibly find, and everything would be great if we would just like, you know, be in a relationship. And now looking back and I remember like, of course she wasn't into me, and like I was like brutally upset about it for like a year or two. And looking back now, if I had gotten what I wanted, it would have been a fucking disaster. Like that would have been the worst thing. That would have been like the worst possible outcome for me. I would have been like I probably would never have gone to Korea. I probably would not have learned code. I probably would never have met all the other people that I've met. I probably would. I also, there is that human nature of like, once you get what you want, you kind of like don't want anymore, or like you want what you can't have. So I'm also like, idolizing this person, and then I'm pretty sure that even if I got what I wanted, I would be upset about it. And that actually happened with someone else I was dating in New Orleans about about a year and a half ago. I met her, and when we first started hanging out, I thought she was the shit, and she actually is cool as fuck. But I thought she was like perfect. I thought she was fucking great. And then like we're kind of in a relationship or like a partnership after a little bit, and we hung out for about a year or so, or 9 months or something like that. By like 3 months in, like it's really interesting. The first few weeks, the first month of that, I would be like worried that she wasn't texting me or all this other like insecure nonsense. And then 3 months and I'm thinking that she was like so wonderful and all that shit. 3 or 4 months after that, I couldn't stand her. Like I couldn't, like there was, I really like. She's actually a great person, so I don't know if she ever watches. We're good friends now. She's fucking wonderful. I think that we just had like incompatibilities and stuff and other shit going on. But I do remember that like 3 or 4 months in, this person who at first I was like, I would just do any, like if I could just be with this person, it would be fucking amazing. She's like everything I want. 3 months later, not even that. It might have been even less. It might have been like 2 months later. 2 or 3 months later, I was like, fuck, I can't even like. I can't stand. I couldn't stand her. I was like in my head thinking of all the weird, like all these things that she was doing wrong. I think that's really interesting, really common too, not just for me, but for like lots of people. I think it's really common to want what you can't have. But yeah, I think it's important. Accept things, let go, make space for future opportunities. Shit comes out of nowhere, all the time. Be ready for opportunities, and I don't know. Etc. I do have to go. I wish that I actually, this was pretty good. It's only 17 minutes. Coupled with the other stream, which was 36, it almost added up to an hour. But I think that this one was a little more succinct. So there you go. See that? Okay, so I don't know if all you're still watching, but I streamed for 35 minutes before this on this exact topic. And then I realized that I had never clicked the go live button on YouTube. So it never actually went out to anybody, which at the time I thought sucked. But in retrospect, now looking back, it made this, it led to this result of having a much better, like 18-minute, much more pared down and like better overall stream. So there you go. That's a perfect example. Shit like that happens all the time. I think if you like, failure is a gift. Like if you're failing, you're pushing yourself. Which is a great thing. Of course, that's a great thing. Obviously, it's really brutal, but yeah, failure will teach you everything. The universe is a perfect teacher. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm getting a tattoo today, baby. Woo! Let's go! Let's go! New tattoo. But yeah, I gotta go get